All right, we have started our recording and we want to welcome all of you guys to week 4, managing stress. And I know stress is just a part of our everyday life for most people. Some people are totally stress-free, but others, it's just a part of life. And so um, we either have to learn to do a couple of things. And when I first started working as a clinical dietitian, we had a psychologist, and I loved having her as part of our team. And I never forget one of the lessons that she gave on stress management. And there was 3 ways that she shared on handling stress. And one was you either have to eliminate stress in your life, and sometimes that's not even possible, but there's some things that we can do to eliminate. 2, you can, if you can't eliminate, then try to reduce your stress. And so there's a lot of tips and stuff that we can go over on how to reduce stress. And 3, if you can't do that, you try to manage your stress. And so today we're going to talk a little bit on that 3rd category of managing stress. But there's also time in there to think a little bit about how you can also eliminate and reduce stress in our life. So I'm just going to share a little story about how I got familiar with stress. I didn't really pay much attention to stress in my life as I was, had younger kids and had started up a gym in Tremont. And then we started up a gym in Preston, and my husband had his own business in conjunction with another company he was working with doing private engineering consulting out of Clearfield. And so it just seemed like we were going a lot of different places and trying to juggle a lot of things all at once. And I was a kind of I'm pretty laid back, so usually things don't bother me too much, but and I usually feel like I can handle it. And so I was just, trying to do more and more and more and cut back in certain areas like sleep. I was starting to cut back a lot on sleep. I'd get really busy and skip meals and forget to drink my water because there was no time for that. Trying to find time to pee, that was just hard enough. So it was getting I didn't realize it was getting so out of control in my life. It's kind of like boiling a frog, that saying that sometimes they don't realize they're getting boiled because you start slow and just build up pressure. But or maybe it's crabs. I'm not sure which one. Anyway, after a while, I started just like having some health issues, and I was just passing out all the time. I think Tammy knew me at this time when I was or she'd heard about me having all these health issues. So it was the weirdest thing. I'd be walking along the street, I'd pass out. I'd be at the gym, I'd pass out. I'd be somewhere, and I'd hit my head pretty hard a lot of times, and I'd just go down, and then it'd take a few minutes after being down, and then I'd come back to, but then my body would be totally weak, and it'd take a little bit before I could even get up. And it was really hard because that, for me to understand what was going on. So I thought, maybe it's a brain tumor or something. We didn't have health insurance. I didn't really want to go get checked. And so finally we went in and had like 1 million tests done, which, let me tell you, that costs a pretty penny through the medical system. And at the end, they just said, you know what, it's stress. And so that was an eye-opener for me. And they said, you're going to have to change your lifestyle. And so that was a time in our life where I really had to take a close look at what I was doing and what with my husband. And he actually at that time decided to come and work with me, and we could manage the gyms together. And that reduced my stress immensely, but I also had to learn to say no and to cut back. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So today I feel like I'm pretty, I feel like I can handle things pretty good, but still learning to manage stress in my life. So let's go to, hopefully, next page here. As we talk a little bit about some causes of stress, some link between stress and type 2 diabetes, and then ways that we can reduce stress and ways to cope with stress. But some things that you want to know, some good tips is we want to know how to plan on how to cope with things, and then plan how to say no, which is a big thing, saying no. This talks a little bit about a story from Barbara. This could be a typical person. I just wanted to share this because this has some good signs and symptoms of Barbara, who's like 45 years old. You can see Barbara here. She feels she's like pulled in all directions. Her children are in high school. Her father has bad health problems. Barbara works full-time and is divorced, and Barbara's doctor tells her she's at risk for type 2 diabetes, and he urges her to lose weight by eating well and getting active. So she just feels a little overwhelmed at this point and decides, because there's one more thing to do. Now she's got to eat well and get active, which is more stress in her life. So sometimes when we're stressed, our body changes its own chemistry, and that's what was happening with my body. They called it vagal syncope, where the chemistry of the body is changing and your blood does not get to your brain, so it actually shuts down the brain, which is why I was passing out. So it can also cause you to act in unhealthy ways, and I noticed a lot of these things were happening to me too. So you may feel more angry, annoyed, anxious, confused, impatient, sad, or worried. Those are some things that you may start feeling. But you also might have some of these physical symptoms, and those are like an aching head, back, or neck. And I tend to get headaches that kind of radiate from the back of my neck up into my head, racing heartbeat, tight muscles, and upset stomach. So those are some just signs, but there's other signs that happen in your body. So some other things that Barbara did was cope with her stress through eating ice cream. And everybody has little coping strategies. And that's one thing I'm going to ask you guys. So start thinking about your coping strategies. And let's see if we can think of some healthy coping strategies. So sometimes coping strategies for people is alcohol. Their brain starts to forget things. Mine's really good at doing that. Put off things that you need to do, rush around without getting much done. Sleep too little, too much, or both. Smoking, taking too much medicine, working too much. So some of those things sound familiar. Maybe you might have a little bit of stress in your life or feeling stress. But also one thing that we notice as health coaches, we tend to see people making unhealthy choices when they're stressed out. And so they may make unhealthy eating choices. This tends to be a common one, or drinking, slacking off of their fitness goals because they may feel like they don't have enough time to exercise, or spend too much time with distraction type activities. And these distraction activities are things like watching TVs or choosing videos, or, Facebook is a good distraction activity too that sometimes we use. So Barbara herself tends to have trouble saying no. And so she ends up doing things that she doesn't really want to do. So that may be something that rings a bell for you. For instance, she may go shopping with her kids and they beg her to buy things, and then she comes in and demands just to their demands just so that they'll stop. And that makes Barbara feel even more stressed. And Barbara decides that she needs to get better at saying no. So the next time she goes shopping with her kids and they want her to buy ice cream, because she knows she's probably going to be the one eating it, she holds firm and says no and feels so proud of herself. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some ways that some tips that they give, and then I want you guys to share some of yours. So here's some ways that can help, but they're not surefire. Everybody has their own coping techniques and things that can help them. But one thing you can do is ask for help. Ask a friend for help, family members, people that can maybe help you. I know sometimes my daughter starts feeling really stressed with school and work and baby, and so I'm always happy when she asks me to help her watch her little baby. This is an interesting one, but Dr. Wayne Anderson in his Habits of Health book talks a lot about being tidy and getting organized and decluttering, because if things are in order, then you tend to be less stressed. Getting enough sleep. Women need about at least 7 hours of sleep. Men need about 8. Believe it or not, men need more sleep than women. So that's why they get crankier, I guess. Yeah, I'm just kidding there. Have fun. Take some time to do things that you enjoy. And something like Sandra was saying at the beginning, she likes to go out for a run into the mountains. Doing things that you really like to do. I like going outside because going outside, nature therapy is one of my favorite things. But going for a walk with a friend, reading a book, watching a video. I've kind of gotten into taking like these little warm baths in the wintertime to de-stress for a little bit. So non-food things are the best things to do. Just say no. Learn how to say no to things that you don't want to do. Know yourself, and when you have certain situations that make you feel stressed, maybe come up with a way to cope with them. If you're going to a big family dinner and you know that's going to be stressful, or a family activity, learn ways to cope with that. And it could be just kind of going outside for a few minutes, taking a few deep breaths, or learning to just go in and say, you know, I'm developing patience and love for others. So knowing your situations helps a lot. Sometimes making a little to-do list and put important things at the top. So make your top 5. I usually do like a top 5 for the day, because if I put my list of everything I need to do and it looks a little overwhelming, I just number the top 5. And if I can get at least top 5 things done, I feel pretty good about myself. Remind yourself to use notes and calendars. If I use my calendar, that helps a ton. And I can guarantee when I don't use my calendar, that adds a lot more stress in my life, because I forget things, and I forget appointments that I'm supposed to be at. So set small and doable goals. If we set really big goals that seem unachievable, that can add extra stress in our lives. So divide it up into smaller chunks. So if weight loss is stressful for you, maybe just focusing on 1 or 2 pounds each week, or just focusing on making healthier choices that week. So it's like a smaller, you know, eating an elephant one bite at a time. When you have a problem, try to solve it promptly, and that way it won't continue to bug you. Don't procrastinate it, and take care of your body and your mind. And I think that is such an important part of managing stress, because like I found out, if you're not sleeping and you're not eating and you're not drinking your water, your body will tend to shut down. So those are some very important ones. There's a lot of healthy ways to cope with stress. So instead of using cookies, we'd strongly encourage to put down the cookies, and instead try some of these healthy ways that you guys could cope with stress. Like deep breathing, I find, is one of the ways that I handle stress. I love yoga. Don't practice it as much as I should, but the breathing part of yoga helps a lot, as you breathe in through your nose and out through your nose and expand into your belly. So if you take your breath from just going into shallow breaths through your lungs, and just take that breath into your belly, and you can even put your hand on your belly, and you can do that for just a moment. Put your hand on your belly and breathe in and feel the breath go into the belly and expand, and then breathe back and breathe out and feel your belly contract there and pull back in. And so I call that the Buddha bellies. Push the Buddha belly out and pull it back in. And that makes the diaphragm raise and fall, which releases hormones that actually calm the body. So if you can take at least 5 deep breaths, and that's a good idea before you yell at your spouse or something. Take 5 deep breaths and see if that calms you down a little bit. Also soothing yourself, getting massage, a hot bath, a cup of tea or something, calming music. Find ways that you can actually calm yourself. Give yourself a little pep talk. So sometimes we get into anxiety and what do we call, like, scarcity thinking. Instead, if we can think of abundance, like there's plenty of time, there's no rush, with plenty of money. You know, give yourself a little pep talk. You're just choosing to use some of that at that time. And then just finding the ways that work for you to relax. So I like to maybe just relaxing a little bit. They talk a little bit about fascia release here, and yoga, massages. All those are really great way. But I want to turn the time over to you guys. Thought I had my computer plugged in, but I'm going to turn the time over to you guys to just share a little bit. I'm going to unmute and share some of you guys' tips that you have for de-stressing. So if we can, if you'd like to unmute yourself. Doesn't look like it's showing my unmute here. There you go. Does anybody want to share some of the things that they do to de-stress?
You know, sometimes I just tell myself, this too shall pass. So that's, that helps in my head.
That is so good. I really appreciate that, Sandra. That's so true. That's a good one. And that's one my mom used to always say, this too will pass. And she's like, the scriptures doesn't say this. It came to stay. She always
You
it came to pass.
Yeah.
How many times does it say on there? It came to pass.
Quite a few. Quite a few. Yeah.
So true. Anybody else have some good tips? Thank you, Sandra.
Well, working out helps me to distress, or walking, or like you said, hiking, go up in the mountains. I do have a tendency to never tell my kids no, and I'll always babysit the grandkids. Or
What is this?
this is speak of the devil,
Just like that.
just like that.
That's the best. Yeah. So maybe
Yeah.
de-stressing will be learning to say no, huh?
Yeah. Sorry, you guys. I got to go do something else.
Good job today. Go have fun.
Yeah, right.
Enjoy them. They do grow older.
Yeah. And sometimes they are my de-stress too, because I really am, they just make me happy.
Hi.
Especially those little babies. They're so good at that, huh?
I know.
So
They
good.
are so fun.
Thanks, Irene. Anybody else have some tips that they use? Scott, how do you de-stress?
Did he leave?
Might have had to go back to work there.
Hey,
Anybody else have some good tips there? Tammy, I know you do. Gonna pick on you.
morning. If you start your morning out, I always start my morning out with my, call it what, miracle morning.
The miracle morning. I think that's such a good thing to start with. I think that helps me a lot too.
So
Tell us
my,
about your miracle morning.
my miracle morning consists of a 5-minute meditation. I start that off very first, and then I go right into my gratitude. And I write 5 things I'm grateful for, and I've actually been doing that since September 15th of last year, every day. I just noticed that. I looked at my notebook and I thought, wow, I've been doing that for a long time. And then I go right straight into my scripture reading. And then scripture reading, I go, I say my declarations. I read them through, and then I do a report. I do a report. I set a little nugget of what I read.
Good.
Nice. Yeah, taking that reading and taking a nugget from what you read. Very good. Thank you, Tammy. Thanks for sharing. I remember listening to a training.
But that really, if you start your day off, that's okay. But today I've already, next week I'm going to talk about triggers, and that's going to be interesting because I've already been triggered today. So I'm working through a trigger, and so I'm glad I did my morning miracle, and I'm glad I have different ways to work through stress and whatnot, so it doesn't sit and build up that resolve in me.
So next week, make sure you tune in to Tammy as she talks about triggers. That'll be
Cool.
Oh, there I am.
There you are, Stacy. Stacy, share with us some ways to de-stress.
Well, I learned a long time ago to say no to things because when I was about 22, 23, my little sister got pregnant at like 16 and she had to live with me because she was going to school in Logan. I lived in Logan and my parents lived in Montpelier. So I learned to say no then because she would ask me, can you take me to the store? Can you do this? And I was doing job and school and I had to say no. And I also learned to ask for help because, all my years with my kids, you have health problems, you have kids, you have, and sometimes I don't want to call people and ask for help, but I tell myself it's okay to ask for help. And if they want to say no, it's okay for them to say no. It's okay for me to ask and them to say no. And you have to let them say no, or you have to remind yourself that it's okay to say no. and that's kind of helpful. The other thing I like is yoga, of course, and the breathing and the calming. And sometimes I'm doing dishes and I get stressed out because I get overwhelmed. And I just tell myself, I can do this, I can do this. And then I put my favorite song on and just have fun, you know? So that's my thing. I like music and dancing and just kind of trying to make things fun about things.
Finding things you enjoy. Very good. Thank you for sharing that, Stacy. I was going to share one of these things that came at a conference that kind of reminded me of what you were saying with the yoga and this meditation that Tammy does with their Miracle Minute. But this gal was just saying that during her meditation, she asked herself if there's anything that's bothering her or irritating her, or anything, or any, you know, if there's anybody that comes to mind that irritates her, and she just lets that go. So she doesn't carry that around. And I thought that was pretty impressive too. Letting go of some of the things that irritate you so you're not carrying that around with you all day long. Well, thank you guys so much. We want to try to keep this a half hour. So thank you for joining us. Make sure you join us next week for triggers, and also check in with your coach if you haven't already to make sure, touch base and make sure that things are going well for you. So have a happy, healthy week, and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Janine.
Good job. Thank you for doing it for me. See
Thank
ya.
you, guys.
Bye.